Alright, so this is actually after day 8 for me. Day 8 was last night. Last night at 11 p.m. I started at PH. Not tons of hours. It was very busy when I got there. I think in anticipation of like madness, they scheduled a lot of people. So I was on the clock, I don't know, about 3 hours. We had a 3-5 table going. I didn't get to deal it. We had a 2-3 600 max table going. I did get to deal that. 3 tables for the nightly tournament. And I think between when I walked in and I left, I think 4 1-3 tables, maybe 5 in addition to that. It's just that around 1:30 a lot started breaking down, but we had a lot of dealers. So I was only going to be on as long as we had 5 tables going. 4 or more, and I was going to be on. And then things broke down, we got down to 3 and I was out. But today's video, kind of like the day 8 video, even though I'm filming after the fact. Wanted to say, the Airbnb video, I was probably going to post it anyway pretty soon. It didn't make a lot of sense if I didn't need it to like wait till the end of the summer, since you like see me in rooms on the strip and walking to work and walking back. So I was probably going to post that anyway. The video you saw yesterday, I think because it was so long, I was having an issue. Not really an issue, it was just taking a very long time to upload, a lot longer than usual, and I tried to do it right before I left for work. So it wasn't done by the time I really needed to leave. So I moved the Airbnb video up, and then when I returned, because it could still make progress while I'm, away from my computer, it was done by the time I returned. It was hilarious that I got back at like 3:02. If I got back at like 2:58, I had time to rearrange things, but just left the Airbnb video up and it got published at 3 and I walked in at like 3:02. So that's why the Airbnb video went up when it did. And yeah, yesterday's video was long, it was like 17 minutes. Today, gonna get into pay first, shout outs, Adrian and Elena, colleagues. You know what's funny? There was a day, I didn't know until yesterday, they've been watching videos, or at least aware of the videos. There was a day I was on a table very far from the desk, which is also the cage, and I needed a fill, and it's Planet Hollywood, so it's loud. So yelling out a name, there were a few people up there, floor people, brushes, yelling out a name that's like just one syllable or maybe just like an initial, probably gonna get lost in all the noise. I needed to yell out a name that was a few syllables and like easier to hear. So I yelled out Adrian to get the fill, and then it sounded like I was Stallone in Rocky. So shout out to them. Also shout out to Lala, who I didn't know was aware of the videos. Found out that the day I worked at Paris. By the way, you think I'm trying to work a lot of hours this summer? I would put money on Lala working more hours than I do this summer. Now, on to the videos. Yeah, no more shout outs. Onto the theme of today's video. So, pay. Normally, I think, in the future, gonna have a separate day, but the first paycheck I got from Orleans just covered orientation. Very simple. I didn't even make graphics for it. So there was a day at Gold Coast, did get paid for it. Last year I didn't. Did get paid this time at Gold Coast. And there was a day actually in the building at Orleans. It was like half general stuff, half poker specific. That day we clocked in and clocked out. I knew I was getting paid for that day. Gold Coast, I also got paid for. That was up in the air. So the paycheck just covered those 2 days. Different system we're using. I can log into last year's system and see only last year's paychecks. Different pay stubs, paychecks. Different system this year. So it was a little cumbersome. And but I managed to log in. I first saw the direct deposit in my bank account. It was the right amount. Managed to find the pay slip for that pay period, saw the exact hours. Orleans does not round, so yeah, the exact, it's as a decimal. So I'm keeping track hours and minutes, converted to hours as a decimal, and it was exact. Planet Hollywood. All right, so this was the first pay period that was all dealing, no orientation. So Planet Hollywood rounds to the nearest 15 minutes. That's one of the options that the state gives its employers. Rounds to the nearest 15 minutes, so no discrepancy. Like last year at Orleans, occasionally it was like a minute, 3 minutes off. Well, that's gonna happen when there's no rounding, because like you're dividing your minutes by 60 minutes in an hour. It's not a very clean decimal a lot of the time. So, but rounding to the nearest 15 minutes, it is. So the time was exact. the paycheck, the pay slip reflected what I had in my records exactly. And as a result, the pay for the wage was also exact. Just multiply that number by 12. Largely, I did have 2 hours of daily overtime on one day. So 2 of my hours were overtime pay, and the rest of my hours for the pay period were regular pay, so the pay was exact. In addition to that, tournament pay. So we have our daily we have 4 daily tournaments. I'm only there to experience the 10 p.m. So there's that daily tournament. In addition to that, we had the mixed game series. So this is what it looks like in the pay slip. There are several rows. I blacked out all the ones except Tokes. Tokes, if I was able to show all the way on the other side of the page, Tokes means pay for tournament downs. Now, so it's been on the screen for a minute. I got $9.33 per tournament down, so nothing is guaranteed, so you really can't do much but just check after and see what you got paid. There are a few things you can check. So we have a toke log that keeps track of how many tournament downs each dealer dealt. There are papers in the poker room, a list of each dealer, and then how many tournament downs that dealer has dealt. I think it's 1 for each week, so you have 2 to check for each pay period. Each pay period is 2 weeks. So I kept track myself, and I checked the toke logs. The toke logs had the right number. The tournament downs I dealt, yeah, I thought it was going to be more. So I asked someone on day 1 what tournament downs would be, because I just wanted something to be able to put into my, my records. I didn't just want to track the downs. I wanted to track the money also. Like, that's what I'm used to from last year when Orleans guaranteed down rates. So the number I first heard was 17. The number actually was 933. I talked to the person who said 17, who said, like, for a tournament series, like the mixed game series in the future, it'll probably be closer to that once there's a much better idea of field size and how many dealers to schedule. For this one, I think they just had a lot more dealers on just in case, which kind of diluted the amount that they were able to pay per down. So, and nothing was guaranteed to me, so nothing was, wrong. My estimate was different than what I got, but the downs is not debatable. So the down amount was correct, and I didn't just go into my pay slip and divide the total amount of dollars by downs to get the 933. I asked the floor to check what the down rate paid to everyone was, and there are documents in the poker room, and that was the number. So yeah, I don't love not knowing until after everything's done. Most of my life has been just, like, nothing's like on commission. That's not the perfect term, but nothing has been like that, and I just know the amount in the paycheck before I get it, including last year at Orleans when they guaranteed down rates. So this is just different. I won't know until afterwards. And if you're wondering, for each Sunday when I tell you hours and pay, I guess from now on I'll use 9. Last Sunday I dealt 1 tournament down at PH and I said 17, so in the future I'll use 9, although without the mixed game series it's just not many tournament downs that I deal going forward. Now, I'll answer this eventually. Someone asked in the comments recently, I think he said he knows someone who's a dealer who said she got double taxed on her tournament pay. And I think I know what he and her were referencing. I'm going to go to the graphics and explain the final part of this PH paycheck that I got. I'm going to use an example. I'm going to make up some numbers just so it's much easier to follow. Let's go to the graphics. Okay, so I'm recreating what my paycheck looks like. I'm just making the graphics in PowerPoint. But here, we have our gross pay for the pay period. Then there's money withheld, federal tax, Medicare, things need to be withheld. And then after you subtract those two numbers, you have your take-home pay. So let's look at this example. Numbers are simple. Say for a single day you were on the clock exactly 5 hours. Say you dealt 2 tournament downs, MTT, multi-table tournament. You dealt 2 tournament downs. A down is a half hour. So that's 1 hour dealing a tournament, and that means 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 hours on the clock not dealing tournaments. So this is our example, and I'm going to work through these 3 columns. So what would your wage be? There's going to be several things in this column, and they sum to get you the gross pay. So your wage is 60. We get the state minimum wage. The state tells the employer you need to pay the employee at least minimum wage. So we get $12 per hour. That's the minimum wage. And I said in this example, on the clock 5 hours. So 5 times 12, $60 in wage. What are you getting for your tournament downs? Let's say, for example, you're getting $10 per down to deal a tournament. Well, there were 2 tournament downs, 2 times 10, $20. So you're getting $20 for your tournament downs. And important to note that these 2 things are known. No cash is changing hands. No paper money is changing hands here. There's a record of both of these things. You're clocking in at the machine, you're clocking out at the machine. They know exactly how long you were on the clock, and you're writing your name down on the tournament time cards, and then someone is manually putting that into software, and they know exactly how many tournament downs you dealt. So these things involve no cash. There are records of all of this, the wage and the tournament pay. Also in gross pay, though, they need to put in an estimate for your cash tips. You deal cash games, you get tips via chips from players. You cash them out at the cage before you go home. You go home with cash. There's no paper trail of this. This is how it's done, but they need to estimate what that number is to get a gross pay number in order to withhold the proper Medicare amount, federal tax. We don't have state tax here in Nevada, so they're going to estimate it. So the tip compliance number is set by each casino. It's not a statewide thing. Each casino decides. At Planet Hollywood, rounding to the nearest dollar, so the number is easier, it's $15 per hour. So the tips should be 60 in this example. You were on the clock 4 hours that were not dealing tournaments. 5 hours total, but 1 dealing tournament, so they know exactly about that 1 hour you were dealing tournaments. They don't know about the other 4. They don't care if you were on break. They don't care if you were brushing. They don't care if you were dealing cash. They're acting like every other minute on the clock you were dealing cash games. So all the rest of your time not dealing tournaments is going to be under the tip compliance. So 4 hours on the clock not dealing tournaments multiplied by $15, which is the tip compliance number, that's 60. So that's the estimate. That's why it's in a background blue and orange font. So your gross pay is 60 plus 20 plus 60. That's $140. 60 of it, the tips amount is kind of like fake. It's like kind of like an estimate, whatever word you want to use. But they need to get this gross pay amount in order to withhold the proper amount. So in Nevada, it's about 15%. It's lower than other states because we don't have the state income tax. So it's about 15%. So they need to get that 140 in order to withhold the proper amount, 21. Then your take-home pay is not just 140 minus 21. It's going to be the gross amount. Yeah, that's where we're starting, minus the money that's being withheld. Yeah, but then also minus the tips, because the tips didn't really exist. It was an estimate that the government and the state came up with so that the rest of the numbers made sense. So the take-home pay is your gross minus the money withheld minus the tip compliance number. So that would be 140 minus 21 minus the 60 tips that really just exists on paper. It's probably not going to be exactly what you actually took home in tips. It exists on paper. So there's the 21, the money that was actually withheld to get the proper Medicare withholding and the proper federal tax withholding. And then the 60 withheld because that number is an estimate that's like kind of theory, kind of realistic, but doesn't really exist. You get $59. Let's go to this example. What the viewer was talking about was sometimes there's an accounting error and the tip compliance is applied to all hours on the clock, not just your non-tournament hours. So let's go back to this point where everything was the same so far. But now let's say instead of the tips being applied to 4 hours, the tips are applied to all 5 hours on the clock. They didn't say, okay, you dealt 1 hour of tournaments and we're only applying the tip compliance to the rest. they mistakenly apply the tip compliance number to everything. So that would mean 5 times 15 is 75. So your tip compliance number is 75. So the gross pay is 155. And then if they're withholding about the same 15%, they're going to withhold $23.25. And then your take-home pay as a result is $56.75. So your take-home pay should have been $59. But if they apply the tip compliance number to everything, not just the non-tournament time, they're withholding a little too much as a result, and you're taking home slightly less as a result. Okay, so bringing that up to answer the viewer's question, also because that happened in my check. It was applied, the tip compliance number was applied to everything. I saw it in the pay slip on my next shift. I told my floor person about it. It was interesting because I locked in that night. I was dealing the last table until it broke. So I locked in, and there was a point where I needed a fill. I was getting pretty low on $1 chips, and I kept looking over at that point when it's just the floor and one dealer. You just yell out when you need a fill. He was on the phone, and I don't know, it looked like pretty important. I didn't want to disturb him, so I got pretty low on white chips. Eventually he was off the phone. I got the fill. You know, things were fine at the table. But then I learned later he was on the phone talking to someone about this, because I mentioned that the tip compliance was applied to everything, and it shouldn't have been applied to everything. He was on the phone with someone about it. The person he was on the phone with, I think, knew and was working to fix it already, although he told me, just to be like extra sure, send an email and you know, mention some specifics, and it's just that's not going to hurt, so do that on your own also. But he talked to someone about it, so there is a way to fix it. It's also not, it's not a mistake of high severity. I would like things to be right, but when, like, it's not like we're dealing massive amounts of tournaments. We did have the mixed game series. Those were largely done. I was dealing like a few downs when those tournaments were going on. I think about $22 too much was withheld. So yeah, I would like the accounting to be perfect, but it's not a huge number, and I'm confident it'll get resolved in the future. In places like Aria, Venetian, Wynn, they have, even during non-tournament series times a year, like right now we're in a big tournament series time of year. Aria has a tournament series, pretty sure, I mean, V always has one. Wynn also does right now. But their dailies are just very consistent. They have large fields just for their daily tournaments. So if you're starting like early afternoon at Aria, you're probably very consistently dealing a lot of tournament tables. If you're starting at midnight in Aria, no, probably like never. But if you're starting at like 11 a.m. in Aria, probably a lot. It would be, it would matter more to people working those schedules in those types of rooms. So I would like to see it fixed, and I'll keep you updated. But the $22 isn't a massive deal, and it's got, even in the future, even if that happens on my next pay period, I mean, now that mixed game tournament series is over, it's like most days I deal 1 tournament down, plenty of days I deal 0 of the 10 p.m. tournament. If that mistake happened again on the next pay slip, I think maybe like $8 too much might be withheld. So I would just like to see the accounting error fixed, but the people way above me are aware and they're resolving the issue. Sounds like they were aware even before I talked to my floor person, who called another person. So there you go, payslip information. In the next one, Orleans will be a lot more interesting. No guaranteed down rates there anymore, so I'll just see what the number is. Yeah, big difference. I mean, I expect the number to be about the same, just I have like nothing to put into my spreadsheet. So that's the big difference. Also, dealt some cash there already. So those downs, I know what the number is exactly. I took home the cash tips. And yeah, also Paris, my Paris hours. So I said, if you work in PH, you can't play in PH, Paris, or Bally's. They're all the same pod. Well, because they're all the same pod, they're also all the same for like working. So my hours at Paris dealing the series, it's just the same thing. It's as if I dealt more hours at Planet Hollywood. same virtual timesheet, so those hours will be in there. So next paychecks, definitely Orleans will be a little more interesting, and we'll see. I mean, the fact that it's Paris just means like slightly more hours. It's not like, I don't know, the graphics are going to be anything like crazy. And it was all cash, so I know the money I took home, and I clocked in, I clocked out. The wage is going to be what it's supposed to be. But yeah, look forward to the next paychecks. Probably one video for Orleans and separate video next time once things really get going here for PH. And remember, rice is a spoon food.